It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That's a brand new one from the band Trixter from the album Human Era. That one is called Crash That Party. And on the line right now to Crash the Party, it's the one, the only, I'm just going to say it, the greatest guitar player in Def Leppard history. It's Steve Brown of Trixter.
You're too kind. Well, thank you very much. I wouldn't go that far with Def Leppard, but I guess that would be an honor, and I will take the prize. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, Steve, obviously a very busy time for you. Certainly we will talk a little bit later about the Def Leppard thing, but for now it is what has always been up front for you. It's Trixter, man. New record, new, I don't want to say new sound, but it definitely picks up where you left off with New Audio Machine, and it sounds a little bit more, I don't know, together. Like this is like, you know, the culmination of doing it, but getting back together for a couple of years. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, totally. That's exactly what it is. You know, when we did New Audio Machine in 2012, we started recording in 2011, but our goal was to make the best possible record that we could, and New Audio Machine gave the band a newfound confidence. We made, I thought at the time, we made the best record of our career. You know, I think New Audio Machine was a combination of our debut album and the second record here, and took the best elements from both those records into where Trixter was in the year 2012. And, you know, it's very rare that a band can come back after so long of not making a record and make such a powerful album as we did with New Audio Machine. With that, we took that energy, the confidence, and the belief that, yes, we are Trixter. 30 years later, we are at the top of our game. And so Human Era came about. You know, when I came up with, I think it was, I'm trying to think what songs really got the ball rolling. For You was definitely one of them. That was probably one of the first, you know, first batch of tunes that I wrote. And that song, I was immediately like, boom, this is the starting point for the new Trixter record. And that was it. And so Human Era, here we are with a brand new CD out, which I can honestly say I think is our best record to date. And you got a band that's firing on all cylinders, and we couldn't be prouder of it.
Sure. Now, the one thing that sticks out immediately to me is that it certainly has the elements of, you know, whatever era of Trixter you liked. You know, it's fun, it's anthemic, it's just powerful rock and roll. I think that unlike the early days of the band, you especially, but the whole sound in general is much bigger and much fuller and not, you know, I don't want to say written for radio, but I think you get where I'm going. It's not, it's a little more balls out than what you guys had done early.
Certainly. That's definitely, you know, I've been producing the records, you know, back in the old days, you know, unfortunately there was always a sound that I had in my head that I was never able to convey to certain people that worked on our records. And, you know, Bill Ray, who produced our first record, was incredible, and we had a great team. We were brand new. We didn't know, you know, about certain things. And then the second record here, we worked with the great James Jimbo Barton, who produced Russian Queensryche. So it was all a learning process. But the one thing I can say is, you know, after Trixter got off the road in '92, I built a recording studio in the house that I live in, and I still live in 22 years later, which, you know, that says something.
Yeah.
But that was the greatest investment I ever made in my life, because that was enabled me to take charge and become an engineer and a producer and be able to control and be able to deliver and get the sounds that I always wanted for the band. You know, I always envisioned Trixter sounding like a cross, if you can believe this, you know, makes absolute sense, but a cross between Van Halen. If you took Van Halen, the first Van Halen record, you took Hysteria, you took Slippery When Wet, and maybe Dr. Feelgood, you know, from Motley Crue, mixed all those records together. That was kind of the sound that I always envisioned, and finally I think we're there. You know, but also, really, to cut to the chase, it's 100% Trixter. We're not trying to be anything but us. Yes, we wear our influences on our sleeves, but all we try to do is be the best Trixter, and that's where we are right now.
Sure. Do you ever listen back to the old records and listen to, like, Give It To Me Good, where you have that kind of muted guitar part and go, man, I would just change that if I could?
Not really. I don't really look back on that. And you know what, man, that song, you know, the story about it took me 15 minutes to write, and it was a song that changed all of our lives and turned us into rock stars. So you can't complain about it.
Right. Definitely not. Well, Steve, talk about Human Era. Talk about the title, because, you know, what does it mean, I guess? And I know that's a dumb radio question, but what does that mean? Well,
PJ Farley brought in the concept, you know, and I thought it was a great title, Human Era. And his reasoning was, you know, kind of we've been together for so long that it made sense to do something maybe a little bit more personal and talk about our relationship a little bit. And the title track, Human Era, if you listen to the lyrics, you know, there's a very poignant lyric in the title track that, is it any wonder we're still together? We built this in a human era. And I think what it boils down to is that when we started the band in 1982, 1983, you know, I was 12 years old, you know, and basically I think Pete was the only one who drove at the time. So when we used to have to go to rehearsal, it was human centered in the sense of we had to ride our bicycles to get to rehearsal. We had to call each other on rotary dial phones. There was no computers. There were no email. All communication that we had was basically done face to face. You know, and I think that's something, of course, we all know that's something missing nowadays. Everything is done, you know, through email and through text message. And, you know, though we love technology and, you know, on this record, Pete Lauren did the vocals in Arizona and he Dropboxes them, the files to me. So, yes, we love using technology, but there's something to be said for human contact and human relationships. And we've endured all of that. And I think that's the common denominator that we have that brings us into this record. And it really resonated with, a lot of the themes on the record.
Listening to this record, man, it's surprising that you guys did this record with so much technology, you know, with the swapping of files, because especially through the more anthemic songs, it really feels, you know, like a very warm record, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I think that goes to our being together for so long, and the fact that, you know, I always talk about Trixter in the sense that we're not a rock band, you know, we are, but we're family, we're brothers. There's a much deeper connection that we have with each other. You know, we finish each other's sentences, we know every joke the other guy's going to tell. There's a camaraderie and a connection that we have that I don't think a lot of bands have, you know, and that's what makes it very easy for us. You know, we record the music here in my studio, which I'm sitting right now, and, you know, Mark, Gus, and PJ come over and we hash out the tracks and work on everything. And, you know, like I said before, we know who Trixter is. We're not trying to be anything else. All we're trying to be is the best Trixter. And Pete, I think, he's been singing the material for so long as far as the Trixter style that when he sings it, it's like he's in the room, whether he's in Arizona or Tokyo.
Right.
It feels like he's in the room because when all four of us put our parts down, it's where we belong, let's say.
Okay. Excellent. Now, no secret, Steve, retro is making a comeback in all areas, in clothing and, you know, gaming and everything, including music. You know, does that leave an opening for a band like Trixter to reemerge, or do you think that it's going to have to be a brand new band in doing the similar style that could relaunch this kind of music?
Well, how do I say it? I don't really know about that, you know. I mean, I think every couple years new bands come out, you know. I mean, look at like bands like the Black Veil Brides. And there's always all these new bands, Avenged Sevenfold, that are influenced. It's obvious, and they wear their influences on their sleeves. And I love those bands, you know, that are, you know, very much influenced by whether it's Motley Crue, Metallica, Guns N' Roses. It's very easy to see. Do I think any of these bands are going to take over the world? again like the old days? No, because that model doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
We're never in our lifetime going to see, in my opinion, a rock band sell 5-10 million records anymore.
Right.
But it is great to see. I teach guitar, and it's awesome when one of my students comes in and hands me a White Lion CD or a Trixter CD or Guns N' Roses and said, "Oh, I want to learn this."
Right.
That's very, very cool. So yeah, there is, and we see it all the time. When we're out on the road, we have little kids coming up to us going, "Oh, I love," and we're signing their CDs. "Oh, I love your first record. I love Always a Victim." These deep cuts on our album. And as a guitar player, especially when somebody wants to, ask me about, "Oh, what's the lick you did in Rockin' Horse? How do you play that solo?" That's very cool. That proves to me, that it's like the way I was when I was 13 years old, man, when I discovered, a newer band, when I heard Dokken or when I heard Rat for the first time.
Sure.
And I was like, man, I want to learn. I say this all the time. Every year, some kid who plays guitar turns 13 years old and discovers, let's say a deeper band from that genre that they love. And the 80s hard rock and heavy metal is something that, it seems to be is always having a resurgence.
Sure, definitely. Now, Steve, you and I have been chatting since 2006 or 7. I think it was back in 40-Foot Ringo days. Was that 2006 or 7?
That's even earlier. 40-Foot Ringo was 2004, maybe 2002, 2004.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a long time, and the one thing that I always am struck by is how much passion you continually have for not necessarily just the project that you're working on, but the music in general, the whole spectrum of the music in general. Now, I'm going somewhere with this. I know you guys play a lot of the package shows, the Rocklahomas and the M3s and those. And I'm curious if you see what I see, when I'm backstage. Because when I'm backstage at some of these shows, and admittedly, I'm not a musician. I'm just, just a guy that knows a lot of people. But I see a lot of bands that are out there for not the passion anymore. I see them out there because they need the money or because they, it's what they can do to earn. Do you see that? And I don't want you to name any names to bring anybody down, but do you see that? And for you, somebody who is so into it, is that kind of depressing to see, if you see that?
I see it all the time. I see, first and foremost, I see a lot of bands that hate each other, hate being around each other, and you know who they are. Mm-hmm. I know who they are. There's a lot of them out there, whether they be the big bands or the small bands. And then there's a lot of the other bands that they are just out there slugging it away, killing themselves, whether it's traveling in a van and going from town to town. But everybody has their own reason for it, and it's a shame. The great news for Trixter is we love each other and we have a great time with each other. So when we get together, it's work because we're rocking. It's not work. I mean, I shouldn't even say that.
Right.
It's a party, but we're out there to do our job and put on a great show. But we're just having a great time. And a lot of times we have so many friends that'll fly out to shows because we don't play. We do 20 to 30 shows a year, if that.
Sure.
And we're genuinely grateful to be there. We enjoy it. We love playing live. So we're just there to have a good time. But yeah, it is sad to see certain bands that are out there. But you know what? Look, everybody has their own movie, man. Everybody's got to do their own thing, and whether it's to make money or, I'm very thankful that Trixter as a band, we get along great, and we really have a great time with each other.
Sure. Now, I mentioned it at the beginning of the interview, and this was one of the coolest things. I actually emailed you, congratulating you on it. The gig with Def Leppard, that's a big gig, man. No matter who you are. I mean, not saying that you're not a great player. You definitely are. But that's a big gig to get, man. How did you get that gig? How did you get that gig? And, what was that experience like for you?
Well, it's a bittersweet phone call to get. First and foremost, the Def Leppard guys have been friends of mine for 27 years.
Okay.
I met them for the first time on the Hysteria tour when I was probably 17 years old. And Phil Collin and I have remained really, really good friends. And, I would probably say he's one of my best friends in the music business. He's always been there to support, 40-Foot Ringo, Stereo Fallout. We've always, kept in contact and do things together. When I go to California, I would go to his house. So a couple years ago, he called me up to do this Mike Huckabee show.
Okay.
And that was the beginning of it, to where, we had always jammed together, whether it be backstage or at his house or my house, and played. And we just always, he's a gearhead like I am and loves guitar. But when this came about, after the Mike Huckabee show, we realized how great our voices mesh together. And in Def Leppard, that the vocals are such an integral part, and Def Leppard doesn't sample any of their vocals. And when Vivian got diagnosed with cancer in 2013, Phil told the guys, I got the guy. And he was, I was the only phone call, that they made.
Okay.
I was the only person they called, and it was an honor. And to say it was overwhelming at first would be an understatement, but I know their gig so well, and I've known those songs for so long. It was such an easy thing. And personality-wise, that's the most important thing. They're all family guys. I'm a family man, and I've known Joe. I've known all those guys since I was a little kid and see them all the time. And so it was very easy. Their crew members, their tour manager, Malvin, who's been working with them for over 30 years. Wow. We're all friends. It's like family. Though I'm American, I'm kind of like, I'm part of the family. So it was very, very easy. And Vivian, of course, he was right there to help me out. I went on the road with them last summer to rehearse a little bit and to go over stuff. Though I knew most of the stuff already, Viv showed me some little tricks, and it was a very easy transition. And the shows were incredible. And the first show I did was, with a Wembley Stadium gig in front of 90,000 people.
Right.
So, wow, what a way to kick it off.
Right. Dude, that had to be intense, man, just to get out there and see that many people out there. And not necessarily that you haven't seen a bunch of people before, but it's literally not your music, and you're like, oh, here I am. I better play this right.
Yeah, of course. And I've never played a stadium before, so to play Wembley Stadium, the most famous stadium in the world, was it was pretty mind blowing, but just awesome at the same time. Like I said, because we've been friends for so long, and I just looked at the guys. Me and Phil looked at each other, and we just went, all right, we're ready to do this. Let's go. And then fast forward to the end of October of 2014, when I did my first full show with them, was at the Hard Rock, the Joint in Vegas. Right. There was no rehearsal. We did a couple sound checks, and Phil and I went over parts and just kind of went, Joe Elliott turned around to me and goes, you know how to do this, mate, right? And said, sure enough. And we went out and, for the next 5 shows, just crushed it, and there's lots of video footage, and, it was a very easy transition, and Viv was very appreciative that I could be there to help out. And, like I said, they are one of the greatest organizations in the world. And, they're my brothers now, and like family.
Sure. All right, one quick one that has nothing to do with you or Trixter, but I know you are one of the most passionate Van Halen guys on the planet, so I'll just ask you, live record, yes or no?
I'll go yes. I mean, what did anybody expect? It's all I can say. It's a real live record.
Oh, it is that.
We all know, and it's been documented. All of our favorite live albums that we all grew up with, and even newer live albums, they're really not live records. Right. They're all redone in the studio, whether it's the vocals, the guitars, live without a net, whether the Sammy one and then live right here, right now. And that record was recorded completely over. It's not a live record. Right. I give them credit for leaving it the way it is. It's the way they sound. I was at the shows. I saw it. That's the way they sound. Like it or not, it's what it is. I can't, I'm not going to be the judge. It is great to hear Eddie Van Halen, my friend, playing as good as he did back in the day. He sounds tremendous. Sure. Hey, it's a little rough, but you know what, man? It's a real live record. Listen to Trixter live in Japan. That's a real live record.
Right.
You know, it's not perfect. You know, yeah, I think Pete Lawrence sounds a lot better than David Lee Roth, but does nowadays. But that's always the way Dave was, man. You know, it's a little kooky at times, but it's Van Halen. It's what they are. I'm not complaining. Well,
I think I'll take the Trixter live in Japan over the Van Halen.
I hear you.
I went and saw it too. Don't get me wrong. I went and saw it in Wisconsin and was like, ooh, this is a tough listen.
I mean,
but you know what? I guess it probably all comes down to what. And Van Halen is one of those bands. It comes down to what you're there to see, because you know there's guys like you that probably don't even know Dave's on stage because you're watching Eddie just go crazy, and then I think
that's part of it. But Chris, you know, I think also when you're there, you're singing. You know, when you go to an arena show, I think Joe Perry said this years ago. There's a thing that goes on. It's called like psychoacoustics, to where you hear things the way you know it.
Right.
You hear. You know, you hear a song especially when you're singing along, you hear it the way it was recorded.
Right.
You know, you're not hearing all those little inflections. I probably will say that I don't think it was the smartest idea for them to release this record. I don't think they needed to release it.
Right.
To be honest with you. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But, you know, it's very cool. The only thing that really bummed me out about it is the packaging, the fact that there's not one picture of the band.
Right.
You know, I love packaging. And I'm actually sitting here right now with that box set, the thing with the 1984. And the first record and the Tokyo Dome. I'm just amazed there's not one picture of the band playing live in a live album.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Packaging's a little suspect, but it is Van Halen, and I think Ed and Al and Wolfie sound great, and Dave sounds good in some parts.
Right. I hear you. Well, what's up next for you guys? What's the year look like and beyond?
Well, we're just booking away right now. We have about 15 to 20 dates on the table for the Human Era tour. Excellent. And I think the band, we head out to Hayes, Kansas on July 3rd and Golden, Colorado. We have our first California dates, which we're really excited for. We're doing that Cat House Live show at Irvine Meadows August 15th, which we're really looking forward to. And in October, we have our first Vegas show at Vamped, and we have the Whiskey in Hollywood that we haven't played in 25 years. So it's going to be a celebratory year for sure for Trixter.
Very cool, man. Well, dude, the new album is called Human Era. It is available now. It is I would say it's probably your most solid record. I mean, I can't think of one I like better than this one, actually. So
I agree with you, man. I think so too. And for all the fans out there, thank you. And make sure it's been the Surgeon General has given proof that listening to Human Era will improve your health. Right. So it's probably a good thing that you buy multiple copies, give it to all your friends, and support great rock and roll.
There you go. Well, well, dude, as a tradition, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the record. Tell us a quick story about it. So what should we wrap this with?
Let's wrap it with my favorite track on the record, For You, which is a song that, you know, of course, is inspired by the mighty VH. It's the first time ever on a Trixter record that the great Mark Gus Scott gets to do a little double bass, Tommy Lee, Alex Van Halen inspired drums. And it's a song that, you know, lyrically we wrote about how lucky we are that we're able to do this, and especially after all these years that we're able to go out, make records, do interviews, play festivals, play stadiums, do all these great things because, you know, and the reason we do this is for our friends, our family, and for ourselves. And that's what this song, For You, we do this for you, and we're still here. And it's a beautiful thing. So, yeah, it's a celebration of all things that Trixter means.
All right, well, let's check it out now. This is For You. It's brand new Trixter right here on your Classic Metal Show.
Ow!